So hey guys, in this video we're going to discuss about friend classes and friend functions. So first of all, I will just give you an idea about how friend classes and friend functions work in C++ programming language, and it does not work in other object-oriented programming language like Java. So it's exclusively available in C++. So first of all, I will just give you an idea of how actually it works and how can you use it, and in the next part we will also implement it in the C++ IDE, and I will show you how actually you can implement the friend classes and friend functions. So talking about friend classes first, so let's suppose you have a class A and you have a class B. So if you have a class A, it has public section, private section and a protected section, out of which we are concerned about only private section in this tutorial. So talking about the private section, we know that if we declare any variables or any functions inside the private section, you cannot access those variables or those functions outside of that class. So we know this thing that if we will also create an object of that class, so then also we cannot access the private section. You can only access the private section of a class within the class scope. So when you declare a friend class, so let's suppose there is a class A which has a private section and has some variables and some functions in it, and you have a class B. So when you will declare the class B as a friend of class A, so what you will do is you will just use the friend keyword, and you will just write the name of the class, for example friend class B. When you will write this line in class A, then you're actually giving the you're granting the access to the private members of class A to the private members of class B. And similarly that happens with that's the same case with the functions, the friend functions also. So if you will declare a function as a friend function by using the keyword friend inside a class A, then this function can actually access all the private members of that class even outside the class. So why actually are we using this functionality? The reason is that in some cases you also want to use you want to create functions or classes that can have access to the private section of some class even if the class scope has ended. That's the main reason why we are using friend classes and friend functions, because we want to access the private section outside the class scope. So one important thing to note here about friend classes and friend functions is that the friendship is not mutual, and this basically means that if you have a friend class A and you say that you have a class A and you have a class B, and class B is a friend of class A, so that doesn't mean that class A will also be the friend of class B. So let's suppose there is a class A and you are declaring a class B as friend, so you are writing friend class B. That doesn't mean that class A can access the private members of class B. This line only means that class B has access to the private section of class A, but the inverse is not true. So that's one important thing about the friend classes and friend functions. So now we're going to take a look at how to implement those and how we can actually do the access the private section of some class by using the friend functions or friend classes. And we will also discuss some more concepts like what is a global friend function and how to use it. So let's jump into the C++ IDE and see how friend functions and classes work. So let's start with the friend classes first. So what I will just do is I will first create a class A, and here in the class A I will declare a private section, and in the private section I will create a variable PA, which is a private member of A. So now I will just create another class which is the class B, and inside the class B I will create a private section, and in this private section I will create a variable B like this. And in the public section, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to create a function which is the void show function, and inside this function we will give the reference to the class A, and X is basically the reference to the class A, so that we will be able to find out or access to the variables of A. So in the public section, this is the function, and we are going to see out X dot private member of class A like this. So in the main function we will create an object of class A, then an object of class B, and simply I'm going to use the B dot show, and I will pass the reference to the class A. So you can see that here I'm just trying to call the function show, which is in the public section, and so I can actually access it outside the main function. So let me just zoom in here. So now you can see that this variable PA, which is the private member of A, is actually in the private section of class A. So if you are accessing this member which is in the private section, it will give an error, and the reason is that whenever you declare any members or functions inside the private class, basically the scope of that particular variable is within the class. So you can only access this variable inside this class and not outside of this class, as we are doing here in this line. So here I will write accessing the private member, and so let's see what will be the output if I will just run it. So here, let me just first clear this up and let me just recompile it. So here you can see that in this in compilation, first of all, here there should be a semicolon. So let me recompile it again. Alright, so you can see here in this line it is saying that note declared private here. So PA is actually of a private member, and you can see here it also says that int A is the class and this is a private member, so it is actually private within this context, so that means you cannot use it. So now we are going to declare the class B as a friend of class A, just writing just using the simple friend keyword, then class and the name of the class like this. So here you can see that if you declare a class B here, which is a friend, you're actually just telling the compiler that now the private section is accessible inside this class B also. So if now you will try to access the private member of class A, then this will not throw any error. So let me just compile it again. So now you can see it is not giving us any error. So let's see how we can display this. So let me just run this program. Alright, so I do need a constructor here, or I can just initialize it here. You can also use a constructor to actually leave this job to the compiler. So now I'm going to run this program again. First compile it and then run it. So now you can see it is displaying the value 10, which means that it is now able to access the private member of class A. So this is actually a concept. This is the concept of friend classes. So one more important thing to note here is that you can access the private members of class A in the class B, but the inverse is not true because the friendship is not mutual. So this means that you cannot access the private members of the class B inside A. For that, you will have to declare, again here you will have to declare friend class A. Then only you will be able to access it. So that's an important point here. So this is just the concept of friend classes. And now let's move on to the concept of friend functions. So a friend function is basically similar to a friend class, and this friend function can access the private and the protected members of another class. And if this will be a global function, then it can be, and if it is declared as friend, then also it can be accessed anywhere in the program. It can access the private and the protected section. We know that the private and protected section is basically the same, and the only difference comes in when we are using inheritance. So private members, which you can see here, if I will create a friend function, and then it can actually access the private members of the class. So let me just give you an example of how the friend functions work. So let me just clear this up. Alright, so let me just create a class A, and in this class I will create a private section, and I will create some variables in it. Let's say we are creating a number n which is equals to 100, and let's create one more variable, and let me just create a character variable like this. So now this is the private section of class A. So now let me just create a public section, and in the public section, alright, so in the public section I will create a friend function, and the way to do is very simple. Just use the keyword friend, and let me create a function void display function. And in this function, I'm not going to write the implementation of this whole function here. I will just write the prototype, and it will accept the object of class A. So I'm going to just leave it like this. So now this is a friend function declared inside the class A, and if I will just write this function out of this class, that means that if in the main function I will create an object of the class A, and if I will just call the display function by giving the object of class A. So now if I will define, I will have to obviously define this whole function, but now I'm defining it outside of this class scope. So let me just define this function void display. Alright, so A object, and this function will basically try to display the number and the character which is in the private section of class A, as you can see here. So you can see here clearly that this is the private section, and we are trying to access the members of the private section using this function void display. And remember, if you will try to access the members using this function void display which is outside this class scope, it will not work until and unless you are declaring it as the friend function. You can see I've declared it as friend. So now it can access the members of the class which is A. So private members are accessible now, and you can see that this function is actually a global function. this is actually an example of a global function, and if you will you would like to just display it, let me just write endl. Alright, so now what I'm just going to do here is I will just save the program, and let's see what will be the output of this program. Alright, so first I will just compile it and see if there are any errors. So you can see that there are no errors if I have, because I've written friend here. So let me just remove this friend keyword and let's see what will be the impact on the compilation. So let's just do this. So now you can see that it actually gives the same error which says that n is a private within this context, so you cannot actually access this outside the class using function. So if I will just declare it as friend, now it will be able to access this outside. So now I will just compile it, and now I will just run this program and let's see the output. So you can see the output is 100 and Z, which are actually in the private section. So you can see here how we have actually used the friend function and friend classes. All these programs are given in our Android application, so you can actually watch if you would like to see them. You can see in the Android app. I have given the link in the description of this video. If you like the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe our channel for some more videos and more content that I'm uploading. So thanks for watching.